I like how Mike A is stuffing chips in his mouth like as soon as we hit record.
I just got home.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
I need to put something inside myself.
I know I'm not shitting on you for that. It's just was funny. You're like and record. Oh yeah. Oh.
The beautiful ASMR.
Yeah.
Yep. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Scuttlebutt. Today we're taking a look at one of the most divisive war films, the 1985 Soviet epic Come and See by Eliam Klimov. We follow Flora, an innocent 15-year-old, navigate the horrors of occupation set in Belarus in 1943. As always, I'm joined by Nathan, Mike B, Mike A. So, guys, what do you think?
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. Who wants to go first?
Look, I like I said last time, I think Mike B and I are gonna take a seat back and let you guys just start eviscerating each other. I mean, maybe the times on Reveille has been good, but I've been waiting so long for this.
Yeah, we just got back from filming an actual feature-length World War II film.
Yeah.
So
So our perspectives have probably changed a little bit.
maybe a smidge.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, Brian, you're the one who, of course, wanted to talk about this one and everything like that. So, okay, just what are your initial thoughts on it? Because I want to know.
well, I mean, growing up, I saw a lot of war films and stuff, and I worked at the museum. And when I started working there, the director at the time was this World War II German reenactor, just really down-to-earth guy, like one of the crazier reenactors that you meet. He was just like, this is how German soldiers acted or whatever. Nothing insane. And he told me, you should probably watch, this movie called Come and See when you get older. And I was like 13, and I had a subscription to Netflix, so I was like, okay. So the next day, I got Come and See in the mail. And I ended up watching it, and it was just this, really powerful anti-war film, especially to see at that young of an age. And it really was just like one of the first times where I saw, war for its rawness and, the trauma of it. And just growing up, it's kind of like, held a place where I've always come back to it and just seen how crazy and fucked up it is. It's like very comparable to Cross of Iron, which is another film that I really like that I think does a good job of talking about like, the realities and the trauma of war and stuff. But over the years, as I become more interested in history and especially the Eastern Front and stuff, and I've read about it, the more I've seen how correct it is, and like how crazy the fucking partisan side of the war was. So, this was a film that I just enjoyed for, setting a bar. It's like, okay, is it as good as Come and See, or does it have the same style as Come and See? And that was initially like my opinion of the film. And watching it recently after making features, thing like that, especially an anti-war film, which is an interesting concept in itself, it's kind of come down as far as the magical factor of it and things. But I still think it's an incredibly powerful film that, does show really the traumas of not just occupation, but, just navigating a war, navigating a situation that you really don't have any decisions in, So that's really my looking at it. And how about you, Mike? I mean, I know that you have a differing opinion.
Me? Yeah.
When's the first time you saw it? Film school or?
Yeah, it was around that time. Someone had recommended, because I knew I was into war movies and such, someone had recommended, you gotta see this Russian film. And I'm like, all right. And at the time I was watching some other stuff and, exploring different things, and I've seen a couple Russian films here and there. And, I don't know, it's weird. Everything that's like Cold War era, like European Cold War era, all has this weird, like, surrealism to it. It's bizarre. I don't know what it was, but it was this.
Russian cinema especially is fucking strange.
And like this kind of reminded me of the movie Tin Drum. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but fucking weird ass movie. And I always heard how fucking realistic this was and everything like that, and just how raw. And it's just like it feels like I'm watching a dream sequence. It doesn't feel realistic to me at all, And I don't know, man. There's a lot of it that's just really weird to me. That doesn't. It just doesn't hit me for some reason. I can't really explain a certain moment or anything like that. Well, I can probably name some moments, but just the whole thing in general, it it just feels very art house to me. And I don't know. And I understand maybe that's part of that's it's supposed to feel that way. Like whatever, okay. It just isn't my sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, more thoughts will come to me as we go. I actually forgot I was doing this today until you reminded me. But
Yep.
but that's just my initial thought of it. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's brutal and everything, but it seems so like heightened and really like just crazy and everything. And it's like, I don't know. I don't really care for the style of it.
True, and it is in a very interesting vein of like Soviet films. To touch on that again, Soviet and Russian cinema has always been really ahead of the game. Like even going back to the 1920s, like some of the Russians are the first people to take a camera and walk around with it, and just get the different types of shots that we're so used to today. That back in the 20s and 30s were so foreign because everything was filmed in a soundstage and the camera was in one place. So Soviet cinema always has been strange, and it's also been very directly tied to like theater and plays. It's there's more acting, there's more longer shots, even to this day. And when this movie was made in the late 70s, early 80s in Russia, it was a very interesting time because communism was kind of just letting the floodgates open for artists with Glasnost and Perestroika and stuff. So you could really say things you wanted to say, and there was so much trauma left behind from the war that a lot of people wanted to talk about these things.
Well, I think I think I had read that the filmmaker, like it took him 8 years to finally get this movie approved by the Soviet Union or something.
Yep.
So it's like, it just I understand. Okay, just get this out of the way because I've criticized this movie a lot, and then people say, "Well, the guy who made it was actually there and stuff like that." It's like, okay, I know that. Okay, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, I understand.
Doesn't mean you're good at filmmaker though.
Right? Yeah, I understand. The guy who wrote it, or one of the guys, I think it was two people. One of the guys who wrote it was actually a partisan, in the area where it happened, Belarusia and or Belarus, and so I get that, but it begs the question of what exactly was like, he was writing something and then who else was there saying, okay, no, you can't say this, you can't do this, you have to put this in here. There were some times where it really felt like that to me, where you're just seeing like these, a lot of like the German stuff, as the Germans being portrayed as like, monsters and stuff like that. That felt very like, propaganda, that felt like really heavy, like really, really heavy. Like I was like, okay, that's a little ridiculous, but
Agreed.
That's
agreed.
Like
agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like the extreme angle, the close-ups of the grotesque kind of angle.
right. And there's
Like,
parts where
yeah.
like they're doing stuff and it shows, like one of the Germans, he's like, and it's just like, who the fuck would do that? What's that all about? What's going on there? And that stuff's really annoying to me. And but also, I'm not going to blame the filmmaker because who knows? Maybe that wasn't his decision. Maybe some fucker for the Soviet Union was like, you need to show this or something like that. It's Soviet Union's a fucking scary, weird place. Was
The Ministry of Film or whatever told
Right.
him he had to, yeah.
but I hate that part of the movie.
Yeah.
That's the thing,
same,
the unseen hand with this kind of stuff.
When I saw that scene of like just making them look like they were just psychotic, crazy. I'm like, literally when I first watched this, like through the whole time, I was like, what the Jesus? What really? Like, what the fuck, man? And it's like, it's so.
Was this your first viewing of it, or was this
The first full viewing? I've seen clips,
okay?
but like,
okay.
it's like, okay, so I saw that, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Germans bad, Nazis. And it's like this. They're trying to tell a story, but it's filmed through the lens of such thick propaganda that, like, yes, I know this is based on true events. Okay, yeah, some people might have at one point in an SS unit put people in a church, burned them alive. Was not the norm. This also happened on The Patriot, by the way, which is a very historically inaccurate film, if you really want to get into that.
God.
But it's no, what I mean is, like,
Shout
when
out
you
to
wanna-
Mel Gibson there.
I'm gonna go stab
when
you
you-
with Old Glory. I'll be back.
Right, when you want to get the point across that these guys are totally bad, you put people in a church and you burn them alive. And it's like, okay, well that, and the whole scene of like them shooting the church, and like it's like, okay,
Laughing uncontrollably.
right, like did that really like look at guys like the SS guys, as shitty as a lot of them were, and most of them in the Waffen SS were foreign volunteers, by the way. Ukrainians were some of the worst, most egregious violators of this shit. Just throwing that out there. They also weren't in that part of Belarusia at that time. But so it's like, okay, these SS guys are going to be worn to their fucking gills. Like, they're going to be tired. They're going to be whatever. The hatred they have towards these commoners that are supposedly, like, harboring partisans, it's like, that's not a new thing to them. Okay? These guys encountered that shit all the time because they knew every village we go into, yeah, they're going to be harboring fucking partisans. It's like the U.S. in Vietnam. They knew, yes, most likely you're harboring these people that are trying to kill us. Now, the reaction that was portrayed in that, to me, was very, very over the top, egregious. Maybe it happened once, and once is too many times, but to portray like every SS guy, or even there was a lot of hair guys, there was a lot of army guys. If you look at the collar insignia, whether the costume artist got that fucked up or not, whatever. If you portray all these German guys as like that's what they did, just that was the normal way of business, well, yeah, everybody's gonna look at the guy and be like, oh, the Germans are just completely fucking ruthless and whatever in World War II. And that to me was just straight up propaganda. It's like that's straight up. There's no room for questioning that. It's just, it is what it is. And that I had a problem with. So.
And as far as that's concerned, this shit did happen on a massive scale. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers of villages were wiped off the face of the earth, for whatever reason. And just to build on that point, it's really hard to compare this to the Vietnam War or another contemporary conflict like that, because you didn't have combat troops doing this stuff. This was the anti-partisan units that sometimes were like dudes that were on fucking trains that were waiting to go home, and they're like, okay, anti-partisan operation, get off the train. You'd have SS guys, you have army guys, whatever. In a situation like that, I understand, you'd have guys that are worn the fuck down by combat, and they're like, oh, this is another village, they have people here, whatever. But in these anti-partisan operations, where you have like units that literally all they do is go and burn down villages and kill people, like this just happened. There was a huge Holocaust in Belarus in 1943, like right before the Germans arrived. And originally I thought it was incredibly over the top. I was like, this is very strange. Russian propaganda, which still is there. There's still 20% of just like, this is still amplified. But reading tons of Soviet memoirs written during the Soviet times when they had censors, not whatever, guys that went to the West, many different viewpoints. It was very true. This shit happened a lot. The fanaticism, the craziness, just the insaneness.
I think
I even have stories. Yeah.
I mean, if it's obviously I'm not going to question whether or not people were massacred and all that stuff. I think it's just I really myself I don't like the way the film they decided to show it. I mean, if you're going to show it, then show it for what it was, rather than it feels like a cartoon to me. I'll just say, like, it feels really like
that scene.
Yeah,
that scene.
I think that's the disconnect here, because it's not the action, it's the execution. And I do agree with you that the way that it's portrayed leaves a lot to you to process. And that was a big thing with Russian films. Like, unless you really know a lot about this movie, it's very hard to watch. And even me, it's taken fucking 10 years and 30 Soviet memoirs to realize all the little nuances put in this thing. Like the plane that keeps flying over, the Soviets would call that the frame of the Rama. And like literally, whenever they saw that, bad shit happened. Either artillery was coming or a German offensive was coming, and that constantly plays into the movie. Whenever something bad happens, the plane shows up. And, so like, again, unless you're super well versed in the Great Patriotic War with 14 volumes, you're going to miss half the fucking shit in this movie. Well, that's because it's not made for you. It's like,
no, it's not.
Made for,
it's definitely not made for me. It's, it is very hard. It is very hard to watch. It's incredibly boring. And,
that's Soviet cinema, man.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. Like, and there's just, again, it's just like weird fucking things that I'm just like, in terms, not in terms of historical accuracy, but just in terms of like a direction. I'm just like, what the hell? Like
The dream-like kind of sequences.
Right,
I think
like the
you're
part.
kind of insinuating.
Oh yeah, and the
Yeah.
like the part where he first meets up with the girl, and then there's this part where they're just it's all this crazy fucking like dialogue and shit, and it's just like, what the hell's going on here? Like,
It actually reminds me of a lot of the European films back probably by like maybe at this point maybe the 60s.
that's what I'm talking about. Cold War
Yeah.
era European films. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because it does all that, and it's almost like anything within the Iron Curtain. It was always about maybe 10 to 15 years too late or later. Like those styles kind of eventually leak in or are influenced within the Soviet Union. Like it's kind of interesting to see that stuff kind of trickle down within about maybe 10 to 15 years of the norm, of Western culture. And that was something that I've noticed when I, did film school and all that stuff. It's like, all that stuff, was pretty much done in Western Europe about 15 years, maybe even 20 years before that. So to see that in the 80s is very, and then and it also being Russian, it's also it's very interesting to see that execution. I agree with you about the dreamlike sequences and how it kind of takes you out of it ruins the rhythm if there is a rhythm in this movie, where it's like I find it very distracting as well, and I agree with you on that. And same thing with like I'm gonna reference it as the moment like that also, but that's all. It's the jarringness that tends to pull me out of following the story, and it takes a couple of watches I feel like to get everything down. And I agree on all fronts. I mean it's very very jarring for me to keep watching it, and it's taken me like I think I've watched it 3 times just for this, just so that I can make sure that I'm set. And by the 3rd time, I'm like, okay, all right, like okay, like so it's funny. Like I'm like mixed between the 3 of you of all the difference in opinion, but like
That's
I agree.
good.
It's
That's
very,
It's funny too because like of all the Russian-made films about the Second World War, and there's a good deal of them, a lot of really shitty ones, and
I was
some
about
that
to
are
say.
better than this. But like this one is really popular in the West,
Yeah.
which is just
Yes.
surprising. Because like my actual favorite Soviet film is called The Fate of a Man, which is from the '60s, and it's about a Soviet POW who gets like taken prisoner by the Germans and ends up in these crazy places and makes it back to like Russian lines, and it's really well done. It's really correct, and it's just like 1,000 times better than Come and See. But nobody's ever heard of it. There's like 4 or
I've
5
never
other
even
films.
heard of it. I didn't even know what that
Yeah.
was.
It's on
So there you
YouTube.
go.
I'll send it to you. It's
Okay,
awesome.
yeah.
Doves Are Crying or Doves Are Flying. That's another one that's very, very good, and it's fucking insane camera work. There's one scene where this building is burning, and they follow this chick run into it, and they follow a firefighter go up a ladder, and they catch back up to her like on the 3rd floor. It's like just really, really cool. But then you have this, which is just like you're saying, very jarring, very dreamlike. So it's funny that this is the movie that like people in the West see as the Russian, reflection
Right.
on the Great Patriotic War or the Second World War.
The one that's got the most coverage, and that's just
Yeah.
it's not for necessarily specific reasons. Maybe it's all the stuff we're talking about, the jarriness, the violence, and everything. But it just happened to be the one that caught someone's attention, and then it blew up in the West or something.
Right.
That's just what happens.
Yeah,
But
it's almost like Requiem for a Dream or something, of just like its jarringness and stuff, and it's so well known, and you hear about it on the street or something.
I guess like a lot of the style of the directing, it reminds me of Spike Lee, a director
Yeah.
who I don't have anything against him necessarily as a person, but I absolutely hate his directing. And it's
He's got some good advice though if you watch his masterclass.
okay. Well, I don't, but but
He's been around the block.
Get shit on Spike Lee.
I don't hate the man, but his body of work is trash.
yeah, but I mean, no, like he does these things to where when I watch like his movies, direction-wise, I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what does that do for people? Like, he'll do weird shit where
He
he'll
has
have,
some strange transitions, like conversations.
yeah,
and
like
stuff.
floating and like the camera's following them, and or do stuff where like he'll have an action happen, then the camera angle will change and it'll repeat the same thing. It's like, what does
But
that
like
do?
you watch the camera angle change though, like you'll see it go from one person to the next.
Well, there's
I
that
don't
too,
get that
yeah.
shit at
But
all.
like, there's
Yeah.
also he did this a lot in his movie Malcolm X, to where like something will happen. Like there's a part, one I can think of off the top of my head at the end where guys bust through a door, and it starts on a close up of the door. They bust through the door, and then right the second after that happens, it jumps to a wide, and they bust through the door again. It's like, what does that do? Like, what is the point of that? Like, and there was a lot of stuff in this that, and also just like Cold War era cinema, like that from Europe that it's just weird shit. It's like, okay, I don't get it,
And it's funny because I'm sure there's I know there's a name of it, like a specific name for the type of film that or style that it is, but like the third person following camera, that tactic, you tend to see that more up close. And I know Brian's gonna fight me on this, but I hate it when I lose sight of someone and it goes around the corner. Like that bothers me. Like, because I'm just like, it's like specifically in Come and See, it's like 2 seconds too slow for the follow shots for me. And I know that's a stylistic style, and I know Brian's gonna like just come down on me because he told me that's what he loves the most. It bothers me to no end that the camera's like maybe 2 to 3 seconds too slow, or 2 to 3 seconds like just around the corner too slow, and like that bothers me to no end. And that's in this movie, that bothers me to hell. I hate that. I'm just like, speed up, get more in line with the frame. Like, why are you turn the corner? Like,
I'll agree that I don't think it will work or really work a lot in other films,
Yeah.
But again, with this one and stuff, and there was that one great scene where like they were like, "Let's run to the island," and then they do that, and it's like
That
shows the
wasn't as
bodies.
bad. It was the first person. Just going back to Mike's comment about like what the fuck is happening. It's the first person following the farmer around the corner of the
Thank you.
his barn and whatever, and the cow
With the
like
cow.
That,
Yes.
Oh, it bothered. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why am I in first person? Why am I this far back from this dude? Why? Like, it's things like that that are like,
Yep.
as an editor, I'm just like, oh god.
Well,
Ugh,
there's
why?
and to going back to what I was saying, to go off that and to go back to the whole Spike Lee thing, the whole movie. I mean, not so much as it gets going, but in the beginning, it's full of lots of shots where it's just like guys like speaking right into the camera. It's like, what is going on here? Why am I like just it's like they're just doing line reads for an audition or something.
Yeah, the dead on like the center of the nose shots.
Well,
where
yeah, it's like
just
that on
yeah.
like everybody's constipated. They've got a shit really bad, but like they're making it look so much more dramatic than what it needs to be. It's like, okay, we get it, but like
The main kid, he gets more constipated as the movie goes on, and just by the end of it, he's like, and just like, get your fucking ugly face away from me, like. So.
You do seem to get closer to Flora as the film goes on. For sure. And there's that really haunting shot at the end when he shoots Hitler.
which oh my god.
Well, you don't want to reverse in time and keep going back and
If I could reverse
Shoot
in
Hitler
time
as a
and shoot a
baby.
picture of a fucking piece of shit, by all means, I'd shoot at those fuckers
No.
every day.
No, Mike goes back in time and shoots the kid shooting the photo. Fucking make it stop. But it does bring me on to an interesting subject though of just like, what is a anti-war movie? Because this really, I think for a lot of people, and probably why it's so powerful, is one of the most traumatic anti-war movies they'll watch. I mean, a lot of movies try to be anti-war. Like We Were Soldiers tries to be like war is bad after they stack gooks for 45 hours. But what is an anti-war movie at the end of the day? How do you convey how crazy war is? This is one take of it. The dreamlike shit and the intenseness and
Well, I don't know. I feel like I want to take this movie and do an edit of my own with it and take out about an hour and a half of it because.
I was about to say it probably would be about 40 minutes.
Yeah,
for you.
it's like it's,
no, it'd be 45 seconds. They're digging, they find a landmine.
I don't need
It's
all these
over.
shots of people urinating and stuff like that. Again, I don't know what the hell's up with European movies, but
A lot of cockplay.
yeah, but I don't. It's weird. I think this movie has been one of those situations that everyone has always told me it's like the most brutal war film ever, and because I've heard that so many times, I'm going to be underwhelmed when I finally watch it, and that's kind of how I felt with this one. I thought Episode 9 of the Pacific was more brutal than this movie was, and I don't know. I wasn't shocked by it. I'm not saying that what's going on in it isn't tragic or anything like that. It just didn't like. Everyone always said that this was like, oh, this is the movie that just haunts your nightmares and stuff. It's like, no, I didn't see that. But in terms of what makes an anti-war movie, I always say the more subtle things, less is more, and this movie really just fucking in your face, I don't know, man. I think that an anti-war movie, it's never going to be a clear definition of one. It's just whatever the audience thinks is or something like that, or the specific individual when they see it. Because some people say Saving Private Ryan is anti-war. I say it's very pro-war. And
It's hard to say it's anti-war when the whole movie is war.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
then a scene in a church where the hand's shaking, and then up, it's war.
That's what I'm saying. Like there's some people they interpret that as anti-war. I myself don't. I see certain things as, I see like Dr. Strangelove as being anti-war. Some people say, "What are you talking about? It's a funny comedy. It's not an anti-war film."
No, that's anti-war.
No, very anti-war. Yeah.
Like Paths to Glory too. Like that's definitely an anti-war movie. If you walk away from that saying, "Let's take the anthill," then you didn't watch the same movie I watched.
Yeah, I love how the anthill just becomes nothing after that.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan for me is definitely. I don't want to say it's super pro-war, but it's more war dramatization.
It inspired a million video games. How can you say it's anti-war?
2 million reenactors. That's the real problem.
Yeah. Between Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan at the same time, it like tripled the World War II.
We need a disclaimer when we talk about that, because it's like, we were reenactors. We have a different biased view of these things.
Yeah.
The general public will not have. So,
but like it's funny because you talk about you talk about Come and See being very much people like go it's anti-war like that, like or sorry, not that, more like it's the greatest movie ever. The war movie films forum on Facebook is very much like that, but it's funny because it's very divided, and I think Brian has mentioned it before. It's like you either love it or you hate it.
Yeah, I got banned from that page again.
Oh, you did? That's why I haven't been posting on that.
Yeah.
I was wondering where
like
you've been on
Reveille?
that, because I like someone posts like Valkyrie and they're just like, it's the best thing ever. I love it.
Horrible movie.
Oh, it's so great. I
Wait
love
till that's on here.
I like Valkyrie a lot, but it's not a great movie.
No,
I like it
M60
for what it is.
Panzer IVs.
I love
Yeah.
for what it is, but it's not a great historical movie. It's a great entertainment movie.
If it was,
And that's
if it had been directed by the guy who made Downfall, I think it would have been really good.
yeah.
And,
And all that doctor guy from Downfall's in that.
he is,
too,
yeah. Get all
which
the
is really
German
cool,
regulars in there.
Yeah.
But so is what's his name who played Fegelein and probably a few others. But
Oh yeah. Right.
what was I gonna say?
He's in every German army movie.
Yeah, I usually don't go for the low-hanging fruit anymore on that site, but on that page. But
It's hard to resist, though.
well, sometimes it's really hard. There was one part where a guy, something about Downfall, and I commented on. I said, my favorite, or something like that. I love this movie. And then old fat fuck, typical boomer type. He wrote below it. He said, "Good movie. However, the subtitles go too fast for me to read." So I was like, I can't help it. I can't help it. So I commented. I said, "Then learn how to read." And that's all I said. I said, "Then learn how to read." And then after that, banned.
You were mean. Don't be mean, Mike.
I know.
I hate this. I really hate it when someone's just like, I can't watch that movie because it's in subtitles, and it's like, well, then you're missing the point.
Yeah, well, then you're a
it's
fucking
like-
moron.
Half the music I listen to, I can't fucking understand, but that's past the point. It's like, I can see what I want to see in it. Yeah.
Fuck. No prisoners. Mike A. Let's fucking go.
No, on that, I fucking agree.
Can't take it.
It's like the
sometimes.
Arnold hand meme from like fucking one of the I forget which movie it is, but it's like, yes, united, fucking read the subtitles, you fuck.
Yeah, I turned Mike on to that. I didn't turn him on to it. I invited him into that group, and then like immediately he was messaging me like, I can't fucking take it.
It's so bad.
And 15 seconds.
I've muted it a long time ago. I go on there occasionally to like see if there's anything new, but almost always it's, have you seen this very like predominant war film? It's so great. Isn't
Fury?
it great? Fury is the best movie ever. Or you'll get people who scream no, and then you get there was one recently about it was another like movie that's like, have you seen this? Oh, Stalingrad 1993. It's like, I haven't seen it. It's so great. It's like, yeah, it's a great movie, and you call yourself a freaking fanatic for war films and you haven't seen it?
Yeah,
Like,
it's one of the big
Like,
ones.
yeah.
One guy asked last week, like, should I buy this movie? And it was Stalingrad or like.
I think that's the
Cross
one
of
I'm.
Iron.
I think that's the one I'm
And he's like,
talking
"I
about.
just found out
That
about
is
Cross of
exactly the
Iron."
one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Sam
Yeah.
Peckinpah's been dead for 30 years. How'd you not know that he made like a movie? It's like, come on.
Well, I also get the ones that I eventually started ranting about it, where like the older guys and shit like that on there will post like the 5 million commando films that Richard Burton did in the 50s and 60s and 70s and everything. It's like that was, and it's it's Richard Burton, in the Desert Fox or whatever, and it's just like him paratrooping with an MP40 and
Rat Patrol.
Rat Patrol, yeah, or something. It's just
all
like,
that shit,
if you
yeah.
just stop posting this fucking garbage that doesn't mean anything anymore. That's the weirdest thing. 50s, 60s, that's what war movies were, either about prison camps or commandos. They were never about the front lines. It's the weirdest
Until the
thing.
Longest Day. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, except for like stuff, like The Longest Day or whatever. But yeah, like you look at all these old war movies, it's always about prisoner of war camps.
There's a lot of POW ones.
Yeah, tons of them. Prisoner of war camps, or
Even the Manchurian Candidate starts in a POW camp.
right. Yeah, it's either that or it's commando shit. It's commandos and stuff.
I got to get you to watch Stalag 17. That's worth a watch, actually.
Someone sent it to me on DVD. I have it here.
Oh, nice.
I haven't watched it yet though, but yeah, I'm going
This
to.
is- yeah, it's worth it, man.
So should we maybe get back to
Come and see. But well, the tangents you get off on, but
I was
Again, this-
before we go on a tangent, I was gonna say, why don't we tickle the gun fancy, which was IMDFB or IMFDB. There we go. My dyslexia. God.
Dyslexia. Yeah. It's fun.
My dyslexia kicked in.
we're looking at all the guns on my FTV, by the way. So.
Yeah. The Walter P-31 or P-38 never fucking used in this film ever. So inaccurate.
Until they pointed his head. P-38 is such a good gun. You like never see them in movies. Everyone wants to see a Luger. It's
Yeah.
like P-38s are a million times better.
Yeah, but hold on. What he's holding in his hand on that top picture is not a fucking TT-33.
What, right here?
that right there.
Yeah, it's
What
not.
is it?
That's not a TT. That's not. Can you zoom in on that?
ECZ.
You make it bigger. You open it in a new window.
I might be able to. It keeps auto playing. It's stupid.
That's what this
there
site
we go.
always does. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like a fucking Beretta 1934, but it's not a fucking Tokarev. I guarantee you, because I own several of
Yeah,
them.
that you see that step there, unless that's just
Yeah.
bad highlights.
The general look of the partisans though was very correct. Like how fucked up they were. Dude using a
Well, but they
Panzer
also
34.
here's the thing that they did all right is they had a lot of Soviet military uniforms and parts of that. I will give them that, because usually partisans are portrayed as like all civilian clothing and like no military gear whatsoever. It's like, no, they had military gear from the guys that were in the
A
military
lot of
that
them
were part of.
POWs. Or were guys that got stuck in pockets and they were like, what do I do now?
Right, and so they were going to have some gear to like pass around. Yeah, and so no, they did that. They did that all right.
I just want to say, usually when I see photographs of like, I know it's a completely different area, but the French Resistance, they usually wear like German helmets, or like Adrian helmets, and like German
Yeah.
tunics and such like that.
Yeah, military shit that was captured.
Well, the French Resistance is interesting. Have you ever seen The Army of Shadows?
I have not.
It's very, very, very good. Actually, very similar to this movie. It was made by a director who was in the French Resistance during the war. And it's like, it starts with him getting flown into France, like on a mission, and it just goes horribly wrong the whole time, and just shows the reality of like being a collaborator and being like a spy. Like there's one scene they have to kill a guy who is like ratting out their organization, and they have a gun and they're in a house and they're about to kill him and they hear children playing outside. So it's like, what the fuck do you do? But it was, much different in occupied France until the joke was the Mothball Army came out when the Allies showed up and everybody was a resistance member and people were wearing helmets.
Yep.
And I had this birth
Yep.
year for 4 years, but 90% of the Frenchmen didn't do shit.
Right.
It was just they popped out at the end of the day. But yeah, there's stories I have in memoirs of like Russian soldiers wanting to wear German helmets or whatever and getting shot by Russian troops and then being scolded for doing it. It's like, what do you expect? You're a fucking idiot.
MP38 40.
Fallschirmjäger with the MP40.
Yep. Those
Yeah.
Yugoslavian pouches, but
Yeah, we had the PPSH 41
Yep.
before that. Now we're down to
Yep.
MP40s,
the
SVTs,
SVT
obviously.
with the Ukrainian. Yeah, when the SVT gets shot, that was a pretty cool scene.
Yeah, he's not okay. So here's that picture. He's not holding an 9130 in that picture. He's holding an 1886-93 Lebel rifle.
Yes, yeah. Which you do see in Russia and stuff during the war. They had so much crazy shit. There's a guy with a P-17 too. There's a dude. With
There's
a
a couple of
P-17
them
movie
in
as
that
well.
massacre scene. There's a couple of them. Yeah.
Which is legit because they show up in Lithuania and Latvia.
Yeah, that guy with the giant glasses. The guy with the giant glasses had the P17, I think.
Well, yeah, it had actually been an M17 because we actually gave them as aid in the First World War, and they made their way through this. So.
Yep, in the 20s and 30s, they were given to the Baltic states and stuff. And I actually have a photo of a T-34 driving into Prague, and they have a fucking M17 through one of the side rails
Oh.
of the turret.
There he is. There he is.
Now, they did a good job with the weapon. Actually, it's too early for a 44, though.
I was just gonna say, yeah, 43. Huh?
That's right.
It could be an MP43, but it doesn't have the side scope base. So,
Right.
and the stocks were like really big for some stupid. They were the same MKB stocks. So,
Yeah, 34. Yeah.
partisan walking around with a 34 is a pretty hot look. Not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
and with that fish shot, with that close camera, we have that
Nate,
depth perception.
with your beard and your multiple MG34.
I know. Yeah, could do it.
That's a 42 that he's holding, though, right?
No, that's a 34.
Yep.
Can you make it?
42s
yeah,
are
make it
correct though. They had
Yes,
42s
but
in
like-
Stalingrad,
that's
so.
a yeah. There's the shroud.
Yep, I got it now.
Yeah.
Yep, we're good. We're good. We're good.
Is that a 4-hole or a 6-hole, Nathan? Oh no.
That's a 3-hole. It's not a 4-hole.
No, I don't know what that means, but
that's,
something.
Well, hold on. They might have an no.
Yeah, well-
they don't have that one there. So like that 4-hole thing that you're talking about is the early war MG15 shrouds. Or the early design of the MG34. It had 4 holes in between the fronts or between the anti-aircraft sight and the front sight, and they
Dope.
made it to a three Swiss cheese hole punch alternative formation because it had more structure because the 4 was for getting bent up too fast.
So the DP28. Okay, here's a little thing. The DP28, as far as I know, had a straight stock on it, and the DPM had that like added fucking thing to it, and then
Pistol grip.
some other
and stuff,
features.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
So
right.
is it a
DPT,
DP28 or is that a
that's the tank one.
DPM?
Well, there's also a DP27 as well. That's a DP28.
Yeah. I
Without
think
the pistol grip,
I
is a
think
DP28.
the without the pistol grip is a DP28, and the DP27's got a weird. I think doesn't have that little.
The M
niche.
stands for modified. So DP modified.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm aware,
Is the,
but like it's
the other one. Oh,
yeah, okay.
the modifieds came out in '44, and you see them by the end of the war. They actually came out at the same time as the RPD came out, and some RPDs were used in Berlin.
Mm-hmm. And SKSs, by the way.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, really?
SKS
I didn't know
45.
that.
Very
Not a
few,
lot
but
of
like,
them, but a few.
Yeah.
yep, they made it there. Yep.
Yep. Simonov's carbine, which is just a scaled down version of the PTRS. So, PTRSD.
Great fucking rifle.
Like if you hold them both together, you're like, wow, it's just a smaller version.
Yeah, the Maxim.
Yeah, you
Yep.
got the Maxim.
The
Yeah.
Dishka.
correct Dishka.
Yep.
I always forget.
Or actually,
I
no,
always
it's. I think it's
Go.
the wrong Dishka in the movie, but because the 38 version looked really fucked up. It has this crazy flash hider. It's like cylindrical and stuff.
I always forget that the Dishka is like really like like was actually in. I always think the Dishka's like Cold War era, and I don't
The
know
only
why.
other
Oh,
anti-material rifle that existed during the
Yeah.
Second World War. I love it when they're on fucking like IS-2s and stuff, and the bigger Russian tanks later in the war.
Yep.
It's a cool look to like you blow up the top floor of a fucking Berlin apartment building with a Dishka, and then you assault.
Well, of
They
course, you
probably
see an
wouldn't
SGM.
have, yeah, they probably wouldn't have an SGM at that point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they would a year later. As far as Krieg goes, they did a great job with guns and stuff and things.
Fucking I.
You do see a good smattering, except for that MP44. And it's funny you don't see a 42 because the 42 actually would like be correct.
Well, when they're doing that scene, or those scenes rather, with the cow and the tracers and everything, that rate of fire was a 42. That was not a 34. That was a 42 with all the tracers going on there. And it's like, okay, I will give them credit when they actually shot those scenes. I don't know how they did that or whatever, but like the sight of the tracers bouncing and the way they bounced, actually 100% realistic. 100%. I don't know how else you could do that without using real tracers. Like the way they were, some of them just kind of spun up a little bit and they burned out in place. Like that was good. So that was a good touch. Like to see the barrage of gunfire, and every fifth round is a fucking tracer, and you're just seeing the stream going with the 42s, and they're just bouncing everywhere. That was good. Okay, so I
There's
appreciated
so many
that.
movies that get that wrong, like
Right.
like in Fury, where they have that
Oh
one
my
scene
God.
with the German zipper or whatever. Well, the worst I think for that is fucking Red Tails, where it's like Star Wars but in Italy.
George Lucas produced Red Tails. You knew that, right?
Why?
Yeah, you knew that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's true. But I've actually never watched Red Tails. I've seen little reviews of it and parts of it. I kind of don't want to see it.
I saw it in theaters, and I saw it with that guy who I mentioned earlier, the director of my museum, and he walked out like 20 minutes in. And he was like, "I don't have time for trash."
Does
And
not
walked
have
out.
time.
And I was just like, "Well, I paid $20,
Right.
so what the fuck."
I'll
But
sit
it was
here and
hysterical.
watch this barrel
yeah.
of diarrhea.
To talk about
Yeah,
those
right.
tracers, like, yeah, exactly. Like, I honestly, I don't know another film that
Talk about
actually
Red Tails.
did that.
Oh, barrel diarrhea. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Sorry.
I don't know another film that actually did real tracers and like put them on camera. Like that was a great touch, and I did appreciate that out of this whole thing. That
Yeah,
was really good
I
because
did like that we're in the. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
no, did you again? It's like you're talking. I'm 5 seconds behind you because my fucking internet is so goddamn shitty. No, that's all good, bud.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I was just saying I did like that with the where you can see him like bounce in the distance. Like I mean that was cool.
Yep. So that
Yeah,
looked really
it's,
real.
It's like I really had a high opinion of the film until I started making films, and the older I got, and I kind of agreed with you guys how jarring it is and stuff. But there are some great shots, diamonds in the rough that just stand out among everything else in this film. So just like that one.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I never have to watch it again.
Yes, my whole beef with those shots is they were way over fucking done. It's like it was like I if I could sum up this film, like we're not gonna sum it up yet, but if I could just sum it up in like 2 words, it's redundant is the first thing. Because you want to drive those points at a certain time. And I get that the film is exhausting and it's like, okay, whatever. And whatever, like the whole thing's horse shit. It's a war. We get it. Like all these points are no, but like if you're making those shots, like the close-ups and like the actual like emotional part, make them fucking count. Okay. Because then it'll be even more than, okay, I saw 15 of them versus I saw 3 of them, whatever. And so redundant is the first adjective adjective. The second is boring. And I say that as somebody who enjoys boring movies about war if they're done right. This one, like Michael said, and I actually agree with that, could be edited down to below an hour or at near an hour, okay? I know they were trying to drive the point home, and I know what they were trying to do. I get that, like you've explained it to me. However, the thing I see most in this film is censorship. Okay? That's the thing I see most is blatant, like, we couldn't do this. We had to do it this way. And knowing the Soviet propaganda machine and understanding, I would like to see if there is such a thing anymore, what the original script and the kind of what the hell is the word I'm looking for, the focus, the intent of the writer was with this, the original one, not the Soviet censored blah blah, add this, take this out, blah blah. That would have been interesting. But that's why I say it's a Soviet propaganda film in general, is because it is, I can tell it's censored. And they added things that they necessarily didn't want to, but they had to. They took things out that they didn't want to. It had a lot of potential, but because it was run through these ringers, it fell flat in my mind watching this, 35 years later, right? And I think it had the potential to live on and be a good anti-war film through the ages if that had not happened to it. If that makes sense.
It does to me. I'm just curious. What do you think is an example of like give me a scene that would be your example of censorship within the film? I'm just curious.
Okay, so making the Russian people look 100% of the time like the victims. Okay, 100% of the time, and the people that were working with the Germans, just these assholes, these pieces of shit that whatever. That wasn't always true because, okay, think about this. Think about a neighborhood anywhere in the world, okay, at any given time. And I know they were in the Soviet Union. I get that. I understand that. Not everybody is going to be on board with the cause, the red cause, and like pushing the fascists back or whatever. A lot of them are going to be indifferent, but it was portrayed in this film like everybody was on board. Yes, the mother and the sisters were, or not the sisters, but like the mother of Fyodor was very reluctant to let her son go and participate in this. However, it's like that was because of like, I don't know, it seemed to me like every Russian or Belarusian in this case, but you know what I mean, like every Soviet, we'll just say, to overlay that, was completely viewed as being for everything that was going on, and every German or German person that were working, or a person that was working with the Germans, the police guy that was rolling around in cow shit and had to go with the cow, was viewed as just scum immediately. It's like, well, that's not how I think it would be, because I know human beings, and it doesn't matter where the fuck you are in the world. Humans are humans. There's going to be, like we're talking about right now, we agree with things, we disagree with things. There's never this like complete bam, one way or the highway kind of mentality. Even in a war, there's not. It's just, it doesn't happen, right? And the way it was portrayed was Russian or Soviets good, Germans bad. That's the basic kind of feel you get out of this film, and so be it. But like, if it was less censored, I would think it would be more of the personal struggles of, okay, you got this Russian village, this poor Russian village or Belarusian village, sitting there and going, well, why do you want to go off and run with them? Why do you want to do that? But it was, because it was censored, I think it was like, okay, well, you got to make it fit to like, well, he's going to fight for this and everybody's on board with that. And like, they have to, or he has to go and do this. There's no other way. Like maybe he picked up the rifle and been like, well, we should go fight these NKVD guys that are been around us, right? Something like that. Maybe they're the bad guy, because a lot of those guys thought that way. And as far as the Germans, again, I'm giving brief examples. As far as the Germans are concerned, yeah, the Germans were portrayed as like the absolute worst, shitty kind of people you could possibly be, right? In this film, and maybe that did happen, and yes, there's documents that said that did happen, which yes, I agree with. However, in this particular thing, if you're making an anti-war film, you're going to want to humanize the Germans a little bit more to make it hit harder home. Where in this case, it was so obviously propagandized to be, these guys were fucking awful, all of them. None of them were humans, and they had the Oberscharführer at the end, the SS guy, the first lieutenant,
The dude with the sugar glider under his helmet. or whatever it was.
Sugar
Yeah,
glider.
I don't know, some lemur thing.
Right, and it's like, okay, well, you're again portraying the Germans as completely fucking evil and the Russians and Belarusians as completely fucking good. And now I think it would have been better if there would have been more creative liberty given, which is not going to happen in the Soviet Union, to this writer and the director who maybe would have been like, let's add some more humanity to it instead of just zooming in, making it obviously these guys are the victims, these guys are the perpetrators. That's just my opinion. It's not right or wrong. It's just what I think could have been done a lot better in this, of giving everybody in this film more humanity than clearly a side.
Well,
So
yeah, no, I agree, obviously, with it, with all of that. What I would have loved to do, I mean, if you want to show these massacres take place, I think you should. I think that's an important
Right.
thing that needs to be acknowledged. At the same time, though, like, what I think would have been more interesting is if we see, like, the chain of command coming down. It's where it's just like, okay, well, we need to do this in order to get to the next stage of where we're going or whatever like that. We need to deal with all this crap. Look, just we need to kill all these people, and then it's like, okay, if there's people out there like they're fine with it, but then there's gonna be other people who are just like, and maybe after they commit these atrocities, you see some of them like, they're wow, this is what we signed
Yep.
up for, huh? Like,
Would you say it's like almost like a lack of a narrative?
yes,
yeah,
Where
absolutely.
it's like there's it's just like, oh, he's gonna go fight with the Russians. Well, why? And he's like, I gotta do it. It's like, well, why? Why are they
Yes.
why are they burning this village? We don't know. Where'd they come from? I don't know. Where are they going? I don't know. Some girl with her top off in a car wreck. Okay,
Yeah.
let's keep going down.
that's how I feel a lot of when
Yep.
it comes to any of these massacres that are always depicted. And I'm not saying that hey,
right.
listen,
Not
these-
everything needs a narrative. It's just as a movie to showcase events. It's very hard to follow
Well,
this movie sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't want it to come across as I'm saying, listen, those massacres happen for a reason. I don't want to say. I'm not trying to say that, but
Good backpedaling, by the way.
yeah. I don't want to say that, but I don't want to come across as that. Is like, no, listen, that was for a good reason. Not at all. However, yes, when it comes to all these fucking massacres, it's always there's no rhyme or reason to it, because they want the audience to feel a certain way. If you bring nuance
Right,
into it, then
right.
it complicates things. And ambiguity and stuff in it, then it complicates things for the audience. They're like, wait a minute, what is this? And honestly, that's the more interesting thing, in my opinion, is when you show the more interesting side. It's like, well, okay, yeah, I can see why they would maybe do that to accomplish their goal of what they were doing. It's fucked up. It's like, yeah, it is fucked up, but it did happen.
Yeah, all valid points. A lot of Russian citizens were shot by Soviet partisans because they had a job working for the Germans. And not just like, I'm a policeman. It's just like, yeah, well, they give me food because I do X, Y, Z. And it's like, you're, a collaborator, and fuck you, and they shoot you. So you're going to face German bullets or Russian ones.
Same with, Vichy regime is the same way.
Yeah, just the horror of living in an occupied country. Like, the best quote I've heard about it is, hopefully your country never gets occupied, because it's just the terrors and the things you have to deal with. Like, my grandmother grew up in Austria during the war, and she said overnight, God was gone, Hitler was in. And then it happened again in 45. Hitler was gone and Stalin was in, But I think that all these things we're talking about, just the vagueness of this movie and stuff, just has to deal with, it's not made for us. It's a movie made for people that grew up in these areas, that understand the context of it. We don't have to go into the details of what's happening, because, well, most of these people that you're going to see in 1985, 86 have lived through it and have done that. And it doesn't do the movie any justice, 10, 20, 30 years on, especially to an audience that, is just trying to grasp it in a category that we put it in as a war film, So it's just a very hard film to understand, because you can paint it 17 different ways,
So I guess my question would be, why is it so popular in the West now? Why?
That's the thing that, yeah.
Because it's violent and it's weird and shit.
I wouldn't say it's because it's violent.
Maybe it got streamed on TNT in '97 or something, and then people picked up on it, because there are a lot better Soviet era films about the war.
What I would say, I don't think it's the violence. I just think I think because we're saturated with even with Hollywood productions like that in in down the same level of gratuitous violence or whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's the violence. I think it's more of maybe the way it's showcased and the, I think it's everything we've talked about, which, the difference, the Russian way of filming in that time period.
Yeah.
And that style that really isn't anywhere else in the world at that time. And, I think I had stated before, like, it was in Western, film before that, but I don't think to the degree that the Soviet era film has done before. So I think that's probably the most enticing part of it. But I would also have to say, probably again what Brian has said. It's like it's probably people view it as a gateway into something that we don't quite understand or have lost connection with through the history. I think people do that with Saving Private Ryan in a way. With the Western culture. So I mean, I think it would be something to that. But I don't understand why it is so predominantly more in, I don't want to say pop culture because I barely anyone knows this.
No, it's like a cult classic. It's
cult classic.
It's like
thank
the
you,
Big Lebowski for
yes.
Yeah.
For Soviet Russian cinema or whatever.
It's very much like the Big Lebowski. Yes.
Right.
Well,
fuck you, Michael. You know what I'm saying? It's. Oh God, I'd slap you in the fucking mouth right now.
You know what? That's like your opinion, man.
I couldn't help it, dude. I'm sorry.
Dude, are you fucking this up?
That room fucking tied the. God damn it! That rug tied the room together. God damn it.
Fucking A, man.
But it's just it's interesting, and I would even wager
Fuck
$20.
with the Jesus.
Such a good film. But I'd even fucking argue that, like, if you are a war nerd in a generic Western country, Europe or America, whatever, the two films you've seen about the Eastern Front are going to be, from the Russian perspective, will be Come and See and Enemy of the Gates.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was about to say that one.
But I'm just being honest. It's just like, again,
that's why we
digging into this.
That's why we're grown, because you're right.
Yeah,
you're exactly right.
I hate that movie so much. By the way,
I want men to have balls.
I'm going to use a PU sniper in 42, a year before they came out, and the year before Vasily Zaitsev even had a PEM, which is fun.
Yeah,
but
long sniper rifles.
Yeah, all snipers. But no, I understand it completely what you're saying, and so that actually does answer my question about why is this so popular in the Western world? Because they see Enemy at the Gates. They're like, oh, this is the Soviet plight in the Second World War. It's like, well, yeah, but like we always say, but so what I'm looking at it as, like, people that aren't necessarily war nerds, right? They see Come and See. If you look at the comments on YouTube, it's unfathomable how much the comments are like, "That's just the best war movie I've ever seen." It's because, okay, and here's the thing is, I will stop shitting on it. Yeah, I will stop shitting on it for a second. It was filmed in a very different way that actually got out. Like, I know Nate was saying in the 60s and early or late 50s, this was kind of a style that was kind of adopted. And I get that, but like something that got big, because 85, that was 6 years before the wall fell. So that's not very long. Like, it had time to get out and actually be seen. And so, yeah, the filming style, like the up close and personal, kind of like the very human, even though it's overdone in my opinion, but like the human connection that you get there because it's so close, it's so personal, very different from what the West was used to. And I think that might have played something into it where it's like, oh, this is so raw and real that this is the most real thing I've ever seen compared to, most people have never experienced war. And like, they go, that seems very real to me because it's uncomfortable to watch. And I get that. I honestly get that. And I respect that part of it. But what I have bitched about already is kind of what detracts that from like current standards of like, I guess what we're capable of doing. Okay. Nowadays, what we're capable of doing is far beyond that. And I think it can be done. I think it has been done recently, but it's taken, but still here's the thing is there's a lot of similarities between what we just did and the way that was shot. Okay. Very up close, A lot better angles, so there's going to be nobody going around a corner, and you're not going to see them, Nate. So don't worry about that. But no, I think that your explanation of that is very valid, and like it's if you see that versus some modern Hollywood bullshit, you're obviously going to gravitate towards that as a non-war nerd, and all that stuff because of the way it's shot, and that's respectable. I just dissecting this as war nerds and like war film nerds, even though you've seen a lot more, stuff, it's like, okay, we all still have a valid opinion. And it's like, yeah, I've already bitched about most of what I wanted to bitch about, but like, I will give it credence as like, yes, it was really good in that respect. So.
As they say, a broken clock is still right twice a day.
Absolutely. That includes yourself, Mister.
Oh, yep. Why do you think I bring it up? But no, overall, it's love it or hate it, you definitely have something to say about it. It definitely
That is true.
does spark a conversation. So
Yep.
for good or bad. But well, I think we've come to the time to give our ratings. So
What are we giving it out of again? 10.
yes.
Yeah, 1.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not the worst thing I've ever seen.
Red Tails.
Yeah, that's much worse. I would probably give this I'll give this a 4 out of 10.
It's not as bad
Nate?
as I thought. I'll let Mike B go.
I would give it a 4 out of 10 as well. That's exactly what I was thinking. Again, not the worst at all, and I respect a lot of the stuff that was done in this. But yeah, it's just for the reasons that I bitched about and ranted about. 4.
I guess I'll go because Brian
Yep.
wants to end on a high note.
No, I could go next. I don't care. That's
I
fine.
want you go.
So years ago, I would have given this film like a 9 or a 10, but now I'm like a solid 8. It's not that like I just view it differently than I did in the past. I still think it's a good narrative. It's a good look into some insane history that occurred. And it's a good film to watch if you're into filmmaking because it's got an interesting take on it and it makes you think. It wants to make you talk about something. Even if you vaguely understand it. Or you totally understand it like us nerds. I mean, it's just, it's a discussion piece. So
That's what I say about the movie Field of Dreams. Don't know what the fuck it's about, but it really did make us think, didn't it?
if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Then let's drive from the Bronx. That's the fucked up movie. Yeah.
Sorry, Nate.
Wait for
No,
War Stories.
no,
Or
you're
wait
fine.
for Scuttlebutt Civvy Street, and we'll talk about that shit.
Sandlot's a better movie. I'm just saying.
Yep.
So I mean, it's funny. Just everyone kind of as always, me going last. Everyone kind of hints of everything I was kind of thinking about and saying and all that kind of stuff. And
We'll go first
know,
next time.
no, it's fine. I always like going last. It's fine. Brian kind of mentioned like you take something away from this. I feel like you take something away from everything. Whether the movie's a complete stinker. I'm sure Red Tails has one good shot in it, Mike A, that you might like. That
We'll
you
never
might
know,
that
'cause
you
he
might
hasn't
use
seen
for a
it.
future project. I know it's probably not really true, but
let's do a commentary track on that movie.
you want to? No, I'm game. I'm game to watch.
Subjecting us to all these shitty movies. All right, anyway, go ahead.
Wind Talkers, Red Tails.
Yeah,
No.
Wind
Mike refuses
Talkers.
to watch Wind Talkers again
One-handed Thompson Mc.
I like how you said again.
Come on, Mike.
because he saw it once and that was enough.
No.
I saw it twice. I saw it twice.
Okay, twice. Yeah.
Nick Cage in a horror movie.
Michael Bay gas tank explosions everywhere. There you go. So.
Indians look like Japs. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
So like I feel like this movie, for me it's 50-50. I like 50% of it and I hate 50% of it.
Okay, so
I don't want to give it a 5 because there's more that I took from it. Like I've read enough Soviet memoirs to be maybe like a quarter where Brian is. That I actually I believe it resonates within the real life history and the atrocities and all that kind of stuff. So I got to give it a little bit of that too. I think I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 Mel Gibsons because Screaming Mel Gibsons. There we go. I almost forgot. Screaming Mel Gibsons. because it does give a little bit more than it takes away in my eye. But I 100% agree with both of what both Mike B and Mike A have both talked about, and even Brian. I mean, it's just I think there's some things they did really well, and then there's a lot of stuff that just either it's the style or the choices or the censorship stuff that Mike was talking about. I agree on that, and I think that's what brings it down in my eye as well. And it is a bore. Like, and I like boring movies, so it is a bore for me. Like I ended up like kind of skipping maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, like for certain scenes. Once I watched it all the way through one time, like the second and third time I watched it, I was like skipping through parts. I'm like, okay, yeah, making a tree fort in the wood and shaking water out of trees. Okay, skip. Like, I don't need to freaking watch that again. So,
You don't watch a guy scrubbing out the inside of a cauldron with birch branches?
dude, I've been there. I've been the hairy dude sitting in a cauldron, scraping it while it's still on fire. All right, you don't know my life.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, so I guess overall, it has the lowest rating of any film.
I think it does.
You know,
Yeah.
5.6. So, but again, it's we still have a lot to say for the worst film that we've rated.
Yeah.
Wind Talker's gonna be a solid -1 for me already.
Negative 1,000 for me, dude. Fucking
Yeah.
we're going
Dude,
down.
I can't do that necessarily because like it is so funny. Like
You don't want to play a harmonica and a pan flute together, Mike? What's wrong with you?
Sorry, Mike. What were you gonna say?
He's good at the skin flute.
Yeah, he's got the skin flute, that's for sure. But you can give it that low though. Like it is awful. It was a waste of fucking film.
It's
It was
so
a waste.
funny. It's
Let's
so
just.
bad.
I'll
It's
just
so
save
funny.
it for.
It's a
I'll just
comedy,
save it-
not a
I'll
horror,
just save
not
it.
a
Only
horror
movie about Saipan. It's so sad that it's so bad.
Yeah, it's. We'll save it for if and when you fucking clowns can convince me to watch that piece of shit again.
Well, join us next time for when we take a look at Wind Talkers.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
I think Mike rather take an apple peeler to his dick at this point.
Yeah, the inside of it. That's the thing. The inside of the dick, not even on the outside. No way.
Well, on that bombshell, thanks for joining us. For
Next week,
this
Mike B will
episode.
use an apple peeler on it.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a rating. Otherwise, Mel Gibson won't stop screaming. If you like this content, make sure to check out our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram pages. If you want to directly support our work, make sure to check out our Patreon.